some of the loneliest moments in life don't happen when you're alone. They happen when you're sitting next to someone and still feel unseen, when you laugh together but don't feel understood, when you share a bed but not your thoughts, when you stay not because you're fulfilled but because you're afraid of being alone. And that kind of loneliness, it hurts more than silence because it makes you doubt your worth, your voice, and your instincts. Being alone can be peaceful, but feeling alone in relationships slowly drains you. If this speaks to something you felt but never said out loud, subscribe for honest conversations about growth and self-respect, and comment below, have you ever felt lonelier with someone than by yourself? Loneliness isn't created by empty rooms or quiet nights. It's created in moments where you speak and nothing lands, where you speak and a thing clowns, where you explain how you feel and it's brushed aside, where your presence is tolerated but your inner world is ignored. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. That's the kind of loneliness that cuts the deepest, not the kind where no one is there, but the kind where someone is there and still doesn't see you. Because physical solitude is honest. It says you're by yourself right now, but emotional disconnection lies. It says you're together, but you're not enough to be understood. And over time, that lie becomes heavy. You start questioning your reactions. You wonder if you're asking for too much. You shrink your feelings to avoid conflict. You silence your needs to keep the peace. That's when loneliness stops being a feeling and starts becoming a wound. Being unseen doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments. When you're excited about something and the response is flat. When you're struggling and the conversation quickly changes. When your silence goes unnoticed because no one asks why you've grown quiet, and slowly you disappear while still being physically present. That's why being alone can actually feel lighter. When you're alone, you're not pretending. You're not editing yourself. You're not waiting to be acknowledged. You can breathe without performance, think without judgment, feel without explaining. Solitude gives you clarity. Emotional neglect steals it. And here's the truth most people avoid. Feeling unseen for too long can damage your sense of self more than being alone ever will. Because when someone consistently overlooks your inner world, you start doing it too. You stop trusting your emotions. You doubt your instincts. You convince yourself that connection is supposed to feel draining. It's not. Real connection doesn't make you feel invisible. It doesn't require you to disappear to be loved. It doesn't leave you lonely while sitting right next to someone. Being alone is neutral. Being unseen is corrosive. And recognizing that difference isn't weakness, it's awareness. If this resonates with you, I want you to pause and ask yourself one honest question. Do I feel alone because I'm by myself, or because I'm not being seen where I am? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Someone else reading them might realize they're not alone in feeling this way. And if you want more real conversations like this about self-respect, growth, and emotional clarity, make sure you're subscribed. There's a quiet damage that happens when you stay in places where your voice doesn't matter. Not all harm is loud. Not all pain comes from arguments or betrayal. Some of it comes from being ignored consistently, subtly, over time. At first, you notice it as confusion. You explain how you feel, but nothing changes. You express discomfort, and it's minimized. You share something important, and it's forgotten. So you try again. You rephrase. You soften your tone. You wait for a better moment. And when that still doesn't work, you start doing something dangerous. You start doubting yourself. You tell yourself maybe you're too sensitive. Maybe you're expecting too much. Maybe your needs aren't that important anyway. That's how self-worth begins to erode, not from a single rejection, but from repeated silence. Because when your feelings are consistently unheard, the message becomes clear. What you feel doesn't matter. And after hearing that long enough, you stop advocating for yourself. You stop asking. You stop sharing. You stop believing you deserve to be met with care. You become smaller, not because you are, but because you've been conditioned to shrink. Staying in environments like that teaches you to disconnect from your own emotions. You learn to swallow discomfort. You learn to accept emotional crumbs. You learn to survive instead of feel alive. And the most painful part, from the outside, it doesn't always look broken. You're still together, still functioning, still fine. But inside, something vital is slowly fading. Self-worth isn't destroyed by cruelty alone. It's destroyed by neglect, by being tolerated instead of valued, by being present but not prioritized. When no one responds to your truth, you begin to hide it even from yourself. That's why leaving spaces where you're unheard isn't dramatic. It's not selfish, it's not giving up, it's self-preservation. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to stop accepting a version of connection that costs you your dignity. Because the right people don't make you beg to be understood. They don't make you question your worth for having emotions. They don't punish honesty with silence. You deserve relationships where your voice has weight, where your feelings don't need justification, where being yourself doesn't feel like a liability. If this feels close to home, take a moment and reflect. Where in my life have I been quiet just to be accepted? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your honesty might give someone else permission to be honest too. Silence isn't the enemy. In fact, silence can be one of the most healing spaces you'll ever step into. Silence gives you room to breathe. It lets your thoughts settle. It allows you to hear yourself again. There's a kind of quiet that feels like rest, but there's another kind of silence that feels heavy, cold, personal. That silence doesn't heal you, it slowly wears you down. Because emotional neglect isn't loud. It doesn't always come with fights or harsh words. Most of the time it shows up as absence. You talk, but there's no real response. You share something meaningful and it's met with indifference. You're hurting and no one asks why. And that silence hurts more than arguments ever could. Solitude is chosen. Emotional neglect is imposed. When you choose to be alone, you still feel whole. You're connected to yourself. You know where you stand. But when someone close to you ignores your inner world, it creates confusion. You start wondering if your emotions are invisible, if your pain is inconvenient, if you're asking for too much just by wanting to be understood. That's the difference between healing silence and harmful silence. One gives you space, the other takes something from you. Emotional neglect makes you feel like you're constantly reaching out and touching nothing, like you're knocking on a door that never opens. And after a while you stop knocking, not because you don't care, but because rejection gets exhausting. You begin to numb yourself. You stop sharing the deeper parts. You keep things surface level to avoid disappointment. And slowly, the relationship becomes quiet but not peaceful. Peaceful silence restores you. Neglectful silence makes you doubt yourself. One strengthens your connection with who you are. The other weakens your belief that your feelings deserve attention. And here's what's important to understand. Needing emotional presence is not weakness. Wanting to be seen, heard, and acknowledged is not asking for too much. It's the bare minimum of connection. You don't need constant conversation. You don't need perfect communication. But you do need to know that when you speak, someone is listening. If you find yourself feeling lonelier in silence next to someone than you ever do alone, that's not peace. That's a signal asking you to pay attention to what your heart has been quietly trying to tell you. Take a moment and reflect. Is the silence in my life giving me rest or taking something away from me? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your words might help someone else put a name to what they've been feeling. Fear is a powerful force. It has the ability to keep you in situations that quietly drain you, while convincing you it's better than being alone. Many people stay in relationships that don't serve them, not because of love, but because of fear. Fear of being lonely. Fear of starting over. Fear of starting over. Fear that nobody else will understand or accept them. Fear that stepping away means failure. Comfort can feel safe. A routine, a familiar voice, a shared space, these things feel like protection. But comfort that costs your authenticity isn't safety. It's a cage. Being in a relationship where you can't fully express yourself, where your opinions are dismissed, or where your emotions are minimized, is a form of quiet chaos. It may look calm on the outside, but inside it slowly erodes who you are. Every compromise that goes against your values, every need you suppress just to avoid conflict, chips away at your spirit. And here's the truth most people ignore. Chaos doesn't hurt more than empty comfort. Sometimes it just feels louder. What feels like peace can actually be paralysis. The daily grind of pretending, of adapting to someone else's indifference is exhausting. It's a slow drain on your confidence, your self-respect, and your emotional energy. Fear of being alone keeps people trapped. It makes them settle for less than they deserve. It convinces them that staying invisible, quiet, or small is safer than stepping into uncertainty. But in reality, staying isn't safe at survival, not living. Leaving takes courage. Leaving means acknowledging the discomfort of solitude. Leaving means accepting temporary uncertainty in exchange for long-term growth. But it also means reclaiming yourself. It means restoring your voice, honoring your emotions, and living in alignment with your values. Being alone isn't a punishment. It's an opportunity. It's a chance to reconnect with yourself, to rediscover your desires, and to rebuild the confidence that gets lost in empty relationships. When you embrace your own company, when you learn to enjoy solitude, you begin to attract the people and situations that match your authentic self, people who see you, hear you, and value you. The cost of staying is higher than the fear of leaving. Every day you compromise your authenticity is a day you teach yourself that your needs don't matter. Every moment spent fearing loneliness is a moment lost to your own growth. So, if you feel trapped in a relationship that doesn't honor who you are, remember this. Stepping away isn't failure, it's courage. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. And learning to be alone isn't loneliness, it's freedom. Have you ever stayed somewhere out of fear instead of choice? How did it affect you, and what steps are you taking to reclaim your authenticity? Share your story and help others realize they're not alone. Self-respect is one of the quietest yet most powerful forms of strength we can possess. It isn't loud, it doesn't demand attention, it doesn't always look impressive to the outside world, but it shapes the way we live, the people we attract, and the boundaries we honor. Sometimes, self-respect is subtle. It's saying no to things that don't align with your values. It's protecting your time, energy, and emotional space. And sometimes, self-respect is something much harder. It's choosing yourself over someone else's expectations, over comfort, over fear. Walking away doesn't feel easy. On the contrary, it can feel like the most frightening thing in the world. Leaving a relationship, a friendship, or even a job that no longer serves you challenges every instinct we've been taught about loyalty, responsibility, and sacrifice. We fear judgment. We fear regret. We fear loneliness. But here's the truth: walking away isn't failure. It isn't weakness. It's honesty. It's courage. It's clarity. Choosing yourself sends a message to yourself and to the world that your worth is non-negotiable. It tells you that your feelings, needs, and values matter, that you will not shrink to fit someone else's comfort or expectations, that you are deserving of respect, care, and authenticity in return. We live in a culture that glorifies endurance and staying at all costs. Stick it out, they say. Be patient, they say. But patience is only valuable when it leads to growth, understanding, or progress. Patience that keeps you trapped in disrespect, neglect, or emotional silence is not wisdom. It is quiet erosion. It slowly chips away at your confidence, your sense of self, and your ability to trust your own judgment. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It is a declaration that your inner life, your happiness, and your dignity are worth fighting for. It's the act of drawing a line and saying, I will no longer accept what diminishes me. And walking away doesn't mean closing doors forever. It simply means stepping out of spaces that no longer nurture your growth, your self-worth, or your peace. It is about creating space for opportunities, relationships, and experiences that align with who you truly are. Every step you take to honor yourself builds confidence. Every decision to prioritize your well-being reinforces your inner strength. Every act of courage to leave what no longer serves you rewires your life for authenticity, growth, and real connection. If this resonates with you, pause for a moment and reflect. Where in my life am I tolerating less than I deserve, out of fear or comfort? What is one area where you can start choosing yourself today, even if it feels hard? Sharing your truth might inspire someone else to reclaim their self-respect too. Growth is rarely loud. It doesn't always happen in meetings, in crowded rooms, or in the opinions of others. Growth often happens in the quiet moments, when the world isn't pressing its expectations on you, when no one is watching, when there's room for your own thoughts to breathe. Solitude isn't emptiness. It isn't loneliness. It's space is sacred, necessary space to hear yourself, to feel yourself, to understand yourself. Without it, we get lost in the noise, the constant chatter of other people's judgments, advice, and demands. We forget to listen to our own instincts, our own desires, our own truth. When you take time to step back, to be still, and to be alone with your thoughts, remarkable clarity begins to emerge. You start noticing patterns in your life. You see where you've been compromising yourself. You recognize the habits, relationships, and choices that uplift you versus those that drain you. You begin to understand why certain moments felt heavy and why others felt freeing. Reflection is a superpower we often underestimate. In solitude, you can examine your failures without shame and your successes without arrogance. You can ask the hard questions. Am I living in alignment with my values? Am I prioritizing the right things? Am I moving toward the life I truly want? These are questions that cannot be answered in the chaos of constant noise. They require stillness, honesty, and emotional space. Solitude also allows emotional recovery. Life, relationships, and even drained, frustrated, and overwhelmed. If we never pause, if we never step back, these emotions fester. They cloud judgment, distort decisions, and slowly erode self-trust. But when we give ourselves space, we allow our hearts and minds to heal. We reconnect with our priorities, reset our boundaries, and regain the strength to act intentionally rather than react impulsively. This doesn't mean you isolate yourself to avoid the world. It means creating pockets of clarity, small rituals where you can breathe and think freely. It could be early mornings, quiet walks, journaling, or simply sitting alone and listening to your own thoughts. Growth doesn't happen in constant motion. It happens in the pause, in the reflection, in the act of hearing your own voice over the noise. If you've been feeling lost, overwhelmed, or unsure about your next step, solitude might be the most radical and productive action you can take. It isn't wasted time, it's the foundation for your next breakthrough. When was the last time you truly gave yourself space to think and reflect? How did it change your perspective? Your experience might remind someone else that growth begins in stillness. The people we allow into our lives have more power over us than we often realize. They shape our energy, our mindset, and even the trajectory of our growth. The right connections don't just fill time, they add value, they uplift, they fuel progress. The wrong connections quietly drain us, leaving us exhausted, frustrated, and doubting ourselves. A healthy relationship, whether romantic, platonic, or professional, creates a space where you feel seen, safe, and supported. You can speak your truth without fear of judgment. You can be vulnerable without worrying that your emotions will be dismissed or weaponized. These are the relationships where your energy is not spent defending yourself, but spent building, learning, and thriving. Contrast that with relationships where you constantly feel invisible, where your accomplishments are minimized, where your feelings are brushed aside. These connections act like emotional leeches. They drain your confidence, your joy, and your sense of self. Over time, you start internalizing the message, maybe my feelings don't matter. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I'm too sensitive. And that's where the damage happens, not in a single bad interaction, but in the repeated erosion of your spirit. The right connections are not just supportive, they energize you. They make you feel lighter, stronger, and more capable. When you're around people who lift you up, challenges feel manageable, setbacks become lessons, and progress feels possible. These relationships remind you of your worth, reflect your potential, and give you the courage to move forward even when life feels uncertain. It's also important to recognize that not every relationship will be healthy forever. Some will naturally fade, and some may have been valuable only for a season. The challenge is to honor the connections that nurture you and have the courage to step back from those that drain you. Saying goodbye to toxic or unfulfilling relationships is not failure, it's an act of self-respect. It's choosing energy, clarity, and growth over habit, comfort, or fear of loneliness. When you prioritize the right connections, you also create space for new opportunities. You attract people who align with your values, your ambitions, and your vision. You surround yourself with energy rather than noise, with inspiration rather than doubt. And the more energy you cultivate in your relationships, the more energy you can invest in yourself, your goals, your dreams, and your well-being. Take a moment to reflect who in your life leaves you feeling alive and capable, and who leaves you questioning yourself. Recognizing this is the first step toward curating a life that honors your growth and protects your energy. Which relationship in your life energizes you the most and why? Sharing your experiences can inspire others to seek connections that truly support them. Being alone is not a punishment, it's not a failure. In fact, being alone can be one of the most powerful opportunities for growth and self-discovery you will ever experience. The real danger is in solitude, it's losing yourself while you're with someone else. Many people stay in relationships where they feel invisible, unheard, or misunderstood, because the alternative, being alone, feels scary. We fear the silence. We fear the unknown. We fear walking a path by ourselves. But here's the truth. Staying where your spirit is ignored slowly erodes your identity. Every compromise, every moment of pretending, every time you silence your voice just to keep peace chips away at who you are. When you lose touch with your feelings, your desires, and your boundaries in order to accommodate someone else, you begin disappearing, not physically but emotionally and mentally. You start asking yourself questions like, am I overreacting? Am I asking for too much? Am I wrong to want to feel seen? And those questions chip away at your self-trust. They hollow you out. Being alone, on the other hand, allows you to breathe again. It allows you to reclaim your voice, your energy, and your power. Solitude gives you the space to reflect on what truly matters to you, to set boundaries, and to rediscover your values. It's a chance to rebuild yourself on your own terms, rather than bending and reshaping to fit someone else's expectations. Choosing to be alone is not a weakness, it's an act of courage. It's choosing yourself over comfort, over habit, over fear. It's saying, I will not sacrifice my identity to avoid loneliness. It's saying, I deserve relationships that honor who I am, not just who I pretend to be. There's a stark difference between temporary loneliness and permanent self-erasure. Temporary loneliness feels uncomfortable at first, yes, but it brings clarity, growth, and strength. Losing yourself beside someone else feels quiet at first, but accumulates into years of unfulfilled potential, emotional depletion, and regret. One builds you up, the other tears you down. Rebuilding alone doesn't mean you will always be alone. It means you are strong enough to prioritize yourself, your needs, and your growth before seeking validation or companionship. It means that when the right people come into your life, you are whole and ready to connect, not hollow, compromised, or desperate. So, if you are in a situation where you feel invisible, unheard, or diminished, pause and ask yourself, am I staying to avoid being alone, or am I staying and losing myself in the process? The answer can save years of frustration and emotional exhaustion. Have you ever chosen yourself over staying somewhere that drained your spirit? How did it change your life? Sharing your story might give someone else the courage to reclaim their voice and rebuild. Loneliness is a feeling, not a location. Being alone doesn't make you weak. Feeling unseen beside someone else slowly erodes who you are. Staying where your voice is ignored, where your needs are dismissed, and where your authenticity is compromised doesn't protect you. It diminishes you. The truth is simple. Solitude can heal, but neglect wounds. Silence can restore, but emotional absence destroys. Fear of being alone keeps many trapped in empty connections, and comfort at the cost of self-respect is a quiet prison. Growth requires space to hear your own voice, to reflect, to rebuild, and to reclaim your energy. The right relationships amplify your life. The wrong ones drain it. And at the end of the day, being alone is temporary, but losing yourself is permanent. Choosing yourself is not selfish, it's courage. Walking away is not failure, it's honesty. If you want a life filled with connection, joy, and authenticity, you have to start by valuing yourself. You have to honor your feelings, listen to your instincts, and protect your energy. You have to recognize that temporary solitude is a gift, not a punishment. Because when you rebuild your inner world, when you choose yourself, you create the foundation for meaningful relationships, real growth, and lasting fulfillment. So if you've ever felt invisible while being with someone, or drained while seeking comfort, remember this: it is better to be alone and whole than together and diminished. It is better to reclaim your voice than to disappear beside someone else. It is better to choose yourself today so that your tomorrow is filled with clarity, peace, and authenticity. What is one way you can honor yourself and your voice today, even if it feels scary? Sharing your experience might inspire someone else to reclaim their power too.